Our next session is called The Great Debate, and we're taking a little bit of a different approach to it than you might expect. So we have three amazing people here today that are going to share some of their thoughts around the future of events and how you can better plan for 2022 and beyond. I think all of us as community marketing and event professionals, we're all having the great debate internally. You know, should we be planning for virtual? Is it hybrid, or are we going fully back to in-person? I don't think anybody has the crystal ball or the right answer. Everybody's kind of going through this great debate, and we thought we'd bring some amazing speakers to share some of their perspectives and things that you should really consider as you have this great debate internally. So with that, I'm so excited to introduce Erica Kuhl, who's going to be moderating this session. Welcome to the stage, Erica.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be the moderator today.
Awesome. Erica, can you share a little bit more about yourself and where you're coming from?
Yeah, so best known for my nearly 2 decades at Salesforce, where I spent time persevering in grit and hard work building the Trailblazer community online and offline programs. And about a year and a half ago, stepped out on my own to package up some of those strategies and frameworks and bring them out into the world to help other companies build those type of incredible community strategies.
That's amazing. We're so excited to have you moderate the session, and I'm going to hand it over to you, and let's get it started.
Yeah, great. So this is a new role for me. I'm so excited to be the moderator, and I'm super honored to bring to you 2 powerhouses in the event space. They're going to bring to you some incredible content. So let's bring out Katie and Chad. And what we'll do is have Katie start off, give us a brief overview of you.
Sure.
And then Chad, will move to you.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Katie Bohrer. I'm based in Dallas, Texas, and I have my own event consulting and strategy group called Onwardly. I think it's important for me to note that the last year I actually was VP of Meeting Design and Experience for an organization called High. And I really spent the last year digging into this exact topic. We produced 25 face-to-face events between July of last year and April of this year, 3 of those with a hybrid component. So I have a lot of strong opinions about this topic. I think it's a super important conversation for us to have as an industry. And I'm excited to be with Chad and Erica today and share more about what we've experienced and what my thoughts are.
Awesome. Like I said, powerhouse. All right, Chad, how about you? Brief overview of you, and then we'll get into it.
Thanks, Erica. Katie is a powerhouse, and I'm a little nervous, but I'm just a regular old guy. I've been in live events for a long time, starting in politics many years ago, and actual government events for years. And I moved on to work in the NFL at the old stadium in Oakland, where the Raiders are no longer, and the Warriors are no longer, and the A's are the last person at the dance. And since then, I've started a lot of companies, and most of those companies are involved in events and facilities and venues, in particular around technology and technology in those events, for those events, how to make those events more efficient, how to make those events safer.
Awesome. This is why I love this panel right here, these 2, because we have pretty much all things covered. So I want to start out with one thing that I would love to hear from Katie to start out. The word hybrid gets thrown around, and I think that it's probably a good idea to start with a definition of what hybrid means to you.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we've come up with all these catchphrases that we use, like a digital experience, omni-channel, a virtual only. And so for me, when I talk about hybrid events, that means that there's 2 audiences represented, or at least 2. It could be 2+. You have somebody that's experiencing something in person, and the second audience is having some sort of virtual piece of it. I think the audience types is important to talk about because I find that as we're starting to plan events and we're bringing them back, a lot of people are getting caught up in what technology is available. They're focused on platform. They start talking about what they're going to do with this virtual experience instead of really talking about how they're designing the event. For me, that is one of the most important messages I have in this space. And it's why I love virtual, digital, omni-channel, whatever you want to say. I love having the second audience type as a tool for event planners to use to maximize what they're representing through the event. So I think it's easy to start with technology, but I go back to the basics of event design. When you're designing experiences, anything you do has to be connected to an outcome. So while there's incredible platforms out there that allow us to do a lot of things that are online that previously we did in real life, I think the best thing to talk about is how those connect to the outcomes that we want to achieve and the audiences that we want to reach. So I love virtual as a tool. And so for me, that's sort of where I come from when I talk about hybrid.
Yeah, that makes sense. Chad, do you have any additions to that or changes or different viewpoints on what you think hybrid is in your world?
No, but I was just listening to Katie and I was thinking about sports for a second, and that sports have been hybrid for, I don't know, forever, since television came around. Mm-hmm. So for conference and trade shows, which is a lot of the audience here today, the hybrid is new, but for sports, this has been going on for a long, long time. And it'll be really interesting to see how trade shows, conferences adapt and start to become, a little bit more like sports, where there's a live audience that's really, really important. And then there's also, I don't know if I'd call it a television audience, but a remote audience that's really, really important as well.
I think that's so well said. Can I just add to that too, that it's like, this has been something that's been around forever. It's like, in some ways you want to say to organizations, congratulations on getting to where we've been for the last 35 years. And tech companies, and I know, Erica, you, in your time at Salesforce, you guys were producing events like this that had this component for such a long time. And now we just have this new audience and these new companies that I feel like are finally getting on board with something that's existed a really long time.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I feel like I've said this before, even actually in another event with this group, is that it's our time. This is like our moment that we've been waiting for and we've been planning for. So it's really exciting to see companies level up and do some really innovative and cool things. And so with that said, what do you like? What has been inspiring to you in this space? Like, you've both worked with so many different organizations. Who inspires you? Either one. Katie, why don't you start?
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah. I think what excites me about this is the way that you have planners who haven't traditionally had this as a tool, who finally have access to it, and the barrier to entry is lower. So you have a few things inspire me. One, you have this expanded audience reach. So whereas you may have been a company who was limited by either space restrictions or location and only where people could fly into. Maybe you had age demographics that were limited. Now, all these things have opened up for us. I mean, I was telling this story about my 95-year-old grandfather can use a QR code. Like, this man should not know what that is. And because of everything we've been through, I think it's this unique outcome. You have organizations that, previously have spent all this money on a keynote. So let's say that you bring a great keynote in. And I worked with a partner, and they had this awesome author who was talking super hard to hear and get to. And they did a live audience, but we also were able to broadcast it and offer people to participate in the actual live stream of that session. And what we did is we collected a small amount of fee and put it all to charity. So now we've expanded the reach of not only something we spent budget on, but something that, again, to Chad's point, we've been doing forever in a lot of other facets. Something else that I think is really important in talking about this is that the way we design this, there's still a lot of innovation around just the design piece. I'm not even talking about technology. I'm talking about creativity. And do you host an in-person event first and then a digital virtual experience after? Or do you adjust the way that you do it and do waves? Do you have one day that's virtual and concurrent, and then the next day is in person? And so I love how companies are maximizing their resources to try to figure out how to accomplish this. Another group I worked with, their only limit to doing an in-person meeting was their Canadian group. And I know we have a lot of people from Canada here, and they couldn't get them into California. So what they're doing is we came up with creative ways to really take care of, it was a very small group of people, like 25 people. So we're not going to produce a 6-figure hybrid experience for those 25 people, but how do we do something really meaningful for that group that allows them to feel connected, to feel acknowledged? And so we're doing a behind the scenes with all of these speakers where they get to do actual personal Q&A with speakers that normally wouldn't offer that on stage in person. So it's something that we're offering that's special for this virtual audience versus what we would do for somebody in person, maybe. So I think there's this opportunity to create FOMO in the design between the two audiences. So you're really still taking care of them in a really special way. So those are just some of the things that come to my mind, is that we have to be innovative even in the way we design this. So
yeah, it's so creative. It sounds so exciting. But I'm thinking about you, Chad, in your world. Some things have to be in person, and creativity is not something that you're able to really leverage. And so what are you doing? I love all those ideas, but what do you think? And in worlds like yours, what do you do when you have to focus primarily in person? And how do you stay connected and mitigate risk and all the things you have to do these days?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but there are some events that don't have the luxury to go hybrid.
Right.
All the music festivals that are ramping up now, not only can they not go hybrid, they can't really sustain themselves if they aren't at full capacity. So you've got to come in and convince governments, and you've got to come in and convince audience and guest members that are going to be there. You got to come and convince the bands that there isn't liability and that this can be done safely. Lollapalooza is going to happen now in really 3 weeks in Chicago with 100,000 people. I'm involved in the event, but I still don't fully understand how they're going to make sure that, per the city of Chicago, that everyone has been vaccinated that's attending that event. So it's things like that. We did an event not too long ago, and I won't name the event, but they were using dogs to sniff out COVID. Does that work? I don't know, but again, a lot of people trying a lot of different things so that they can get back. For a long time, one of my businesses had to pivot and sell thermal cameras to take people's temperatures, to again allow them to come into schools, into amusement parks, into restaurants. Is that foolproof? No, I don't think it is. I don't think it's close to. But again, it allows people to be creative and to find ways, to fill outdoor venues, which are safer, to partially fill indoor venues within, certain space allocations. So a lot of people have done a lot of things to keep it going. And now that we're in a place where you can do more large events and larger attended events, I think what people are doing to get those people back and make them feel comfortable is going to be a variety of things. But again, a lot of people are just going to assume that, hey, I've been vaccinated, I feel good about myself, I'm ready to attend.
You brought up a really interesting point, well, tons of interesting points, but I'm thinking about, like, when you're planning these events, surely part of it is this risk mitigation, and that's always, I'm sure, a few bullets on your punch list, but never in a million years could we have ever thought the unthinkable could happen like it did over this last year. So what's changed in your process when you're thinking about events now, from an event, like from risk mitigation or just preparation? So Katie, what are you doing differently now? Or is it just the same for you and you've always done this amount of rigor?
No, I think that we've always done risk management, but I think what we're evaluating is different. And I think more things, and I keep using this phrase, have opened up for us as possibilities. So I did a hub and spoke event in November, and we had 5 locations that were live and had in-person audiences, and then we had a full virtual audience. One of the cities declared a state of emergency 2 days prior to the event. Well, in previous times, we would have just canceled that city, like it would have gone away. And instead, our contingency for that was to reassign everybody that was going to be in person to that virtual audience. And so that was the first time I realized that this was potentially a contingency for even canceling something. If we, I say, God forbid, something else happens that we can't travel or we can't get to an event. Previously, the only option available to us was really to cancel the whole thing or to postpone it to a future year. And now there's these new things that we're willing to participate in a new version of these events that could go to all virtual. Or say that you're limited by capacity in hotels. I mean, we're going to have tons of issues with space in the next 2 years because of the compression on all these events that delayed to 2022, 2023. And so I think about, let's say that you can only bring 500 people in for a sales kickoff that normally has 3,000. That normally might have completely derailed what was possible for that event. And now it's like, okay, well, let's invest that budget in a different way. Let's open that audience up. In fact, let's see if we open this to our European office that we've never invited to participate in. So, and I know a lot of this probably for this audience, because we all have these tech savvy, incredibly forward-thinking people, isn't revolutionary, but what we're doing is educating new businesses, new procurement teams that have never considered this something that we should invest in. And we're finding ways to innovate within this space. And that gets me super excited, even for the in-person experience. I mean, I love what Chad talks about in that we do have demand issues and we have challenges in the way we're executing this. But I believe the greatest innovation comes out of those opportunities where we're limited by some sort of crisis or shortage. And then what do we do instead? Like, this is the stuff that probably will impact our events for the next 25 years. That's all being creative out of these needs and maybe out of these shortages. So that gets me really pumped up as an event planner.
Yeah, go for it.
I think that for the folks on this call listening, as they think about bringing some of these events back, hybrid, not whatever, there's got to be a lot of thoughts about the staff. Are we going to test the staff? How often are we going to test the staff? For an event that might be 1 or 2 or 3 days, it might be acceptable for individual guests to come in and assume a certain risk. But we can't really do that with our staff that we're asking to be there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks prior to the event to build that beautiful event. So, what do we do there? How do we handle that? Where's the liability? Forget about the liability. Where's just the common sense to make sure that if someone does get sick with or, without, the COVID being involved, how do we keep that person away so that the rest of the staff isn't affected, so that now we have a real issue on our hand that we can't build that event? We're definitely seeing some of these larger events come back, but they're still paying a lot of close attention to their staff, getting the staff tested even if they have been vaccinated, making sure the staff fills out an app every day with their condition, their temperature, things like that. Those are going to be critical things, and I think, as sort of Katie said, that we're going to be dealing with long past COVID. How do we maintain and take a little bit more responsibility, for the welfare of the staff that actually puts this event on?
I'm wondering if that, hearing all that, it's an incredible point, and we have to think about our people as number one. And I think companies are doing incredible things within their organizations to ensure trust and safety. And then I think about now, bringing it back out. Do you see a shift in ROI that you're planning then? You talked about budgets, you talked about staff. Is there a new way that you're measuring success at these events now that might be different than it was before, based on just like all the things you just mentioned? Katie, I feel like you've got to have a different set of ROI based on hub and spoke, smaller events, some reach, broader reach. Like, tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think for me, it's always going to come back to outcomes, right? So, you have some organizations who their goal is to increase attendance. And so maybe they have something where people pay to attend, and maybe now they're able to offer a lower price ticket to do something virtually. You have organizations that are producing 30,000 person, company-wide meetings. That's a different piece, because you're not trying to increase your audience size. That audience size is it's what it is, but you're trying to make sure that everybody feels safe and comfortable. And your evaluation as an organization becomes realizing that not everybody is comfortable getting back together with 30,000 people, let alone that you might not be able to find the space for it. So the tool that you have with a virtual experiences is to allow a new way to take care of the hospitality and the safety, and I think the best interests of the people that are attending. So you kind of have these different things that you're engaging with, that you're measuring. I think there's increased, these are obvious, but I think there's increased sponsorship opportunities for virtual events. I think your in-person experience becomes the most dynamic that it's ever been, because we all have been waiting to be back together face to face. But to Chad's point, I think the way that we take care of our people, both attendees and our staff, has never been in higher focus. And I love that that is a new thing coming out of this, and I'm calling it well-being considerations, because I think that even once we're, ideally beyond this sort of risk that we're having right now with COVID, I think that the well-being and the health and safety of our guests is something that now we're going to consider overall. What we feed them, how we make sure that Chad's business works in safety and security, like how we make sure that they feel safe attending something. Those are all conversations that have been sort of on the edges, and the best companies always thought about it. And now every company has to think about it, because we're getting asked questions as planners that we never got asked before. What's your cleanliness? How often are you, cleaning the rooms? What's the hotel doing? We never really went through all that with our groups. And now I'm doing pre-conference calls with all of attendees, telling them how often the bathrooms get refreshed at hotels?
Right.
Those are questions that people are asking us. And so I think that piece is a really vital outcome of this, even that we're kind of digressing into outside of even a hybrid experience. Your face-to-face event has more considerations than ever to be looking at.
It's interesting to pull those.
Have you done? Oh yeah.
No, I was just going to say, Erica, it's interesting to pull some of those points together, which is, and sports has dealt with this for a long time as well, which is, man, it's a pain in the butt to go to the event. I'm just going to watch it on TV.
Yeah.
And so, we've got this whole opportunity where, yeah, people want to come back, and there is no comparison to going to a show, having that one-on-one contact with individuals, meeting them for the first time or reconnecting with them or doing the business dinner afterwards. But, it's going to be a lot easier for someone to say, you know what, I'm going to stay home. I'm just going to watch it virtually. I'm going to stay in the office. I'm not going to travel. And that's something that's going to really have to let all of the folks out there that are listening to us today really have to step up their game and make those events not just safer and more comfortable, but back to what Katie was talking about earlier, a lot more creative, a lot more special, for them to get on that plane, for them to go and reserve that hotel room, for them to go and find that rental car that doesn't even exist right now.
Yeah, to make it more compelling. And on the flip side, the kind of amazing thing about it is that you may have somebody that can't travel, whether they're a caretaker for a parent, they're a single parent, they maybe they have social anxiety. Like I've been thinking about this group of people as, even as learners, we're all different as adults, right? There's a group of people that would rather chat and feels more comfortable engaging in that way. Like that isn't necessary. That's never been an audience demographic that I've considered, but I think there's a cool opportunity here to even take care of some of these people that for whatever reason can't travel or don't want to. So I think you can argue and sort of support both sides of it, but you're absolutely right. It's going to have to be compelling to go in person and to get on a plane and to go through everything it takes right now to attend something live.
Yeah, I think you bring up an incredible point that people it's not a one size fits all. And that's the way it's been in the past, is like have this massive event and all the effort, all the energy, all the content. Entire companies pivot for entire years to focus on that event. And now you have this really incredible way of leveraging that momentum if you're still going to have that event, but leverage that for a broader reach. So do you see that that's happening, that you're able to, use the momentum of events and broaden it out that way? Is that something that you've seen, extending the reach of the content and the effort that people are putting into their events?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was like, I can take that one. I mean, yeah. I think that what it makes us realize is what we need to focus on for the in-person experience. I think if anything, the last 18 months has taught us is what we really value and why we like to get together in person. So in planning that, I mean, we overstructured one event that we brought back and we had all this content in the front and all people wanted to do was hang out and drink beer together and talk and catch up and tell each other what they've been doing for the last 18 months. So we as planners really missed the mark because we had overprogrammed the hell out of the first, 3 hours. And people were like, can you just let me sit with everybody that I haven't seen in forever? Right. And likewise, I think something about technology is we can't let the pendulum swing too far the other way. Right. In that just because a technology exists doesn't mean it needs to be used for every single event. And I was thinking about a quick example of this. I got on a Zoom call where they had encouraged every participant to do a moving virtual background representing themselves. It was a terror. It was the most distracting. And I know people are laughing at this because it's a nightmare. Like if you get on a virtual event and you see somebody with sharks floating behind them, that does not necessarily enhance the experience for anyone. And so I think about that in technology, like just because it exists out there doesn't mean you have to use it for your event. Like figure out what makes sense and what really maximizes what you're trying to accomplish. So. And
that's why I love this. And I thought, in our last 5 minutes here, people are planning right now. And Chad, we were chatting about this before, like what do people's 2021 look like? What does 2022 look like? What are event managers, planners, community leaders, what are you doing? And I love that you guys are here. And as Marcia said, there's no crystal ball. It's not like even with all of Katie's experience and all of Chad's experience, they can predict the future. But I guess like for the ones on the call today that are planning for their early fall or are planning for 2022, what would you say to them beyond this incredible advice you've already given them? But what is the one thing that you can help event planners or community planners or whoever's on the phone today to make those difficult decisions and win that debate internally and make great decisions for the future? Katie, Chad, you start.
I'm jumping in. Katie doesn't get to go first. She's gone first.
I'm sorry.
No.
I want to hear what Chad has to say.
I would just say, first of all, bring those damn events back. We all want them back. We all need them back. So bring them back. But the big warning is, don't think that you're going to come back to 2019. Right. Don't think that you're going to come back to 2019. It's very easy to stop all the events in a matter of 2 weeks. It's very, very hard to gear back up. And that has to do with our staff and our labor. It has to do with our hotels and our rental cars and our airplanes. It has to do with our heavy equipment. The entire landscape has changed. And so I would just say to them, be cautious and do as much pre-planning as you can, because not all those resources are going to be there. Not all the staff are going to be there. They've gone on, they've found different things. They've sold that equipment. That company's gone under. It's unfortunate, but it's going to take us a long, long time to ramp back up. And when we do ramp back up, I don't think any of us know exactly what it's going to look like. So I don't know if that's advice or more of just a warning. Good. Maybe Katie is the one with the advice.
No, I think it sounds like your advice is slow roll it. Like but slow roll it and plan the heck. I mean, you guys are by nature planners, obviously. But like you have to think of new things, all the things. Like you mentioned something, Katie, that I hadn't even thought about, which is pre-event attendee planning. Like that's not really something, maybe like community leaders are out there used to maybe gaining Q&A ahead of time or curating some content ahead of time, but like pre-attendee Q&A more than a blog, that never really existed as far as I remember. So Katie, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I think Chad's advice is great. We're not planning in the same environment. We shouldn't expect that. So just know that there's going to be a learning curve there. I think mine is that you need to have this debate internally. And it's very important that you get the right people in the room to talk about what's important in the event and why you're hosting it. You need to get the stakeholders in the room. You need your CFO in the room so that you can educate and talk about why we're doing this. Because half of what we're doing is educating why you should invest in a virtual experience if you decide to do that, and what that connects to your point, Erica, return on investment or return on engagement. Right. And the other thing is, I was talking to Dana Paik, who's another strategist I work with, and we were loving this idea of like using this as an experimentation phase. You know, the same way that you develop an app or a product, you assume that that's a prototype every time you do it. So to be innovative and take some risks right now, we have an opportunity where people are really willing to kind of accept a lot. They're willing to accept the guest room behind me while I'm talking. They're willing to accept, internet going in and out, because that's the environment we're in, because we have all this grace-filled space to bring events back. So use that to take risks and be innovative and have a lot of fun with it, and then evaluate it and change it for the next time. That's what gets me really excited about bringing events back.
Gosh, I feel like we have to sort of wrap it up on that, because I just think that's incredible advice. And everyone thinks in the event space it has to be ticked and tied and perfect and gorgeous and just like, and if anything we've learned from this last year and a half is that being a little rough around the edges and having a catwalk through your screen and being in your bedroom, let's just be okay with this and try some new things and bring in new audiences, bring in new voices, be global for the first time. And I'm in love with that. I think that's awesome. And so I guess that I feel like we could talk about this. I kind of got chills right there, which is so nerdy, but I think it's about time to wrap it up. We could continue. And I think, Marcia, we do have the ability to continue this in a booth, I think. So we'll turn it back over to you and we can continue this great debate over there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erica, Chad, Katie. That was such a fascinating discussion. And you're right. I feel like we could talk about this for days. But I really hope that all of you here in the audience and in the community have taken away some points that you could bring up in the next great debate that you have internally.